I discovered the terrifying secret lurking outside my tent at night. I never should have opened that door. My heart raced as I felt a chill creep through my bones, sending shivers up my spine. It was supposed to be a fun camping trip with friends. A quiet retreat, surrounded by nature, a chance to escape the noise of life. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, but now, everything felt off. As dusk fell, a heavy blanket of darkness wrapped around the campsite. The chill in the air was palpable. I could hear the rustle of leaves, a gentle whisper that tickled my ears. The sound danced around the edges of my awareness, both inviting and sinister. Shadows loomed large, they flickered and writhed with every whispered wind. The cozy warmth of the campfire felt distant now, and all that was left was the space between the trees, a yawning abyss. It wasn't long before the strange noises began. A cracking branch shattered the silence. I shot upright, heart pounding. Just a deer, I muttered to myself, trying to convince my racing mind. But then came a low groan, like the earth itself was warning me. I squinted into the night, my pulse quickening, the hairs on my neck standing tall. Something moved just at the edge of the clearing, an indistinct shape, hovering in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the darkness. It was what lurked within it. A feeling of being watched washed over me, heavy and suffocating. I could hardly swallow, hands trembling as I reached for the flashlight. But the beam flickered weakly, barely illuminating the path ahead. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to shake off the dread. "It's nothing," I whispered. But then there it was again, a scraping sound, just beyond the tent. Like nails against fabric. Doors creaked in the winds of my mind. I froze, the cold sweat trickling down my back, breath hitching in my chest. I peeked out, my flashlight steadying, illuminating only the void beyond. That's when I heard a soft whisper, almost like someone calling my name. I squinted, straining to catch a glimpse of the source. It echoed in the silence, haunting and familiar. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the shadows. My blood ran cold. My heart pounded wildly, my hands coated in sweat as I stumbled backward. I froze, legs like lead. What was that? A face, or something that resembled one, catching the feeble glow of my flashlight. It stared back at me, unmoving, unblinking. The air turned to ice, chilling me to my core. Then, the whisper transformed into a shriek that pierced the night. The world spun around me, the darkness closing in. I gasped, unable to tear my eyes away. Everything in me screamed to run, to escape. But I was trapped, frozen in fear. With a deafening slam, the tent door flew open, and darkness swallowed me whole. I was left teetering on the edge of something unimaginable. I could feel its presence, breathing down my neck. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness pressed tightly against the thin fabric of the tent like a predator closing in on its prey. I could feel the distinct sensation of eyes crawling over my skin, lingering at the edges of my consciousness. The initial scream still echoed in my ears, a harrowing reminder that whatever was lurking outside had intentions far darker than mere curiosity. I scrambled backward, seeking comfort in the corner of the tent, my heart hammering against my ribs as though it sought an escape. My breath came in short gasps, each inhale tainted by fear. The flashlight pulsed uncertainly in my hand, flickering on and off as though it too were terrified of what lay beyond the trembling boundary of fabric. "Get a grip," I whispered fiercely to myself, though my voice quavered. "Just breathe." I didn't dare to glance outside again. The figure was still there, a grotesque silhouette frozen in time. Moments stretched, each second clawing at the fabric of my sanity. The sounds of the forest devolved into a thick silence, as if the woods held its breath, waiting, anticipating. Then there came that sound, a scraping, rhythmic and deliberate, as if something was trying to etch its way into my reality, folding me into a nightmare of its making. And then the whispers returned, curling around my ears. Soft, yet laden with a terrifying urgency. They wove together like a sinister tapestry, forming a cacophony that rose and fell like the tide, each pulse drawing me closer to the edge of madness. Help floated through the air, laced with desperation, coaxing me, calling me by a name I couldn't quite grasp. That I tried to shake it off, eyes darting around the tent, searching for a weapon, anything that might help me fend off whatever had slipped beyond the thresholds of reality. My fingers brushed against the canister of bear spray, slick with sweat. It was a promise, a flimsy safeguard against the horrors I sensed lurking a breath away. And then, amid the chaos, there was movement outside. The silhouette shifted into the eternal gloom, morphing fluidly, elongating into something grotesque and impossible. I blinked, fighting the urgency to look, to confront the terror. It felt as if time slowed to a crawl, grinding on, and the dark became a sentient force, taunting me. Just as courage bubbled in my gut, a violent force hit my tent, sending me stumbling back and sending the bear spray clattering across the floor. Panic clawed at my throat. I pulled myself upright, and with sheer desperation, I lunged for the flashlight, reflecting what little hope I had left. As the beam steadied, I directed it towards the source of the thrashing. The light cut through the blackness, revealing fragments of the space around me. But it wasn't the dark that haunted me, it was the horror of what I saw just beyond. The figure was no longer a mere shadow. It pulsed and writhed, shifting like smoke, with elongated limbs that moved with profane grace, always just beyond the reach of the flickering light. Foolish boy, it hissed, the voice dripping venom, coated in layers of mockery. You feel it, don't you? The growing dread. The anticipation of despair. That I stared in utter disbelief as a grotesque smile twisted across its face, revealing a mouth too wide, too unnatural. Its features morphed, oscillating between clarity and oblivion, mocking the very essence of humanity. That chilling familiarity lingered, and I tasted the bile rise in my throat. What are you? I managed to choke out, fear merging with a flicker of defiance. Your nightmare, came the echoing response, reverberating through my trembling body. Your reckoning. A sudden wave of energy surged through the air as the shadows twisted around me, blurring the edges of my perception. I could feel the fabric of reality beginning to tear. The whispers crescendoed into a tumultuous roar, drowning me in a suffocating embrace. And then it happened. The night came alive. The forest itself writhed in symphony with the terror that stood before me. Leaves rustled and trees creaked in protest, the ground beneath me shuddered. The last remnants of my sanity clung on by a thread as the figure lunged forward, its hands reaching out long, claw-like fingers grasping for me, desperation dripping from its every movement. Just as I braced myself for the inevitable, the tent ripped apart like paper, a surge of cold air slamming into me. The world beyond burst into view, a silhouette against the endless night. Then, as if summoned, the bulk of a massive shadow leapt into the clearing behind the figure, a form shifting and howling with power, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't just fighting for my sanity, I was bargaining for my very soul. But the truly horrifying realization crashed over. Meth screams echoing in the darkness were not just warnings. They were lures. I could already feel the pull wrapping tightly around my spirit, threatening to haul me into a realm beyond comprehension. Just as the shadow surged forward, and the ground heaved beneath my feet. With a shuddering breath, I turned to flee. But the earth itself seemed to rebel against my escape, and every step felt heavier, pulling me closer to the gates of unfathomable dread. Darkness curled around my ankles, threatening to drag me into its chasm, and as I glanced back I saw that the figure now had company, and what stood beside it was the last thing I expected to see: me own reflection, grinning with a malevolent glee as it beckoned me forward, craving my surrender. I screamed as the world shattered around me. The scream echoed through the forest, slicing through the stillness like ice, and the shadows seemed to ripple in response. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as the dread pooled thickly in my chest. The figure-me reflection moved closer, a perfect, twisted replica of myself, its laughter a grotesque imitation of my own despair. The landscape morphed around me, the trees elongated, their bark twisting into faces filled with grotesque agony, watching, waiting. Gnarled roots snaked across the forest floor, grasping at my legs, holding me in place like a web of nightmares. As I fought against their advance, the figure laughed, its sound mingling with the whispers that clamored in my ears. Join us, it cooed, the melody haunting and seductive. You're so close to freedom. Just let go, the monstrous shadow behind it writhed, yearning. It wore the guise of a being once human, yet the malevolence in its eyes burned like twin coals, promising eternal torment. You cannot escape your own darkness. It will consume you. Desperation twisted in my gut, and I turned to run, ripping my feet free from the grasp of the roots as shards of panic raked through my mind. Each breath propelled me forward, though the ground slithered beneath me, almost eager to reclaim me. I could hear the laughter splintering off into the wind, promising that there was nowhere to hide. Just as I thought I could lose myself in the trees, an anguished howl shattered the air, a sound both human and beastly, reverberating deep within my bones. It tore at my seams, beckoning me back into the darkness, compelling me to face what I had become, yet I couldn't stop. Fear clawed at my insides, each step heavier than the last. Without warning, something snagged at my ankle, pulling me off balance. I hit the ground hard, the breath leaving my lungs in a sickening rush. The forest floor opened up before me, an abyss of shadow and twisted roots. As I felt the darkness surge closer, wraps of tenebrous tendrils closing in around my body. Desperately, I clawed at the earth, frantically searching for anything to hold onto, but then I saw it beyond the choking grip of shadow. Broken pieces of a mirror scattered across the forest floor, glinting in reflexive shards. Visions flashed through my mind, memories that felt both precious and tainted, laughter, warmth, flickering candlelight. But they were tainted, too, effaced by a haunting emptiness. With a surge of newfound determination, I reached for a shard, the glass cold and jagged in my palm. I instinctively held it towards the figure that had once mirrored me. You're not real. I shouted, the echo of my own voice mingling with the cacophony of the damned. You're nothing. It paused, that grotesque smile faltering, a brief flicker of something unnerving passing across its features. In that heartbeat, I surged forward. Maybe I could fracture the illusion that lurked in the dark, cleaving through the mantle of the other self standing in my shadow. I am my own soul, I cried, spiraling into an unwavering resolution. But the shadow howled, a sound that rattled the very air around us, as the tentacles of dark began sliding up my calves, wrapping tighter, squeezing the life force from my being. Chaos is woven into the very fabric of your existence, the reflection hissed, ire weaving itself through every syllable. You will be mine. A thundering crash echoed nearby, following by the crackling of branches, announcing the arrival of an untamed monstrosity, its trees bent and gasping for breath beneath the sheer weight of its presence. When I looked back, the forest opened up to a new horror. Countless eyes, blinked into existence within the bark, their gazes steady and unwavering. They bore witness to my plight. No. I screamed as I jerked my gaze to my reflection. You're nothing. You're just a shadow. But before my words could take root, cold fingers grasped my wrist, and the ground erupted, sending a reverberating shock wave through the air. I was hurled backward as the forest crumbled into chaos. The laughter transformed into shrieks, shattered voices rising around me as I was consumed by darkness, and just as I thought I would be swallowed whole by despair, I spotted the mirror once more lying on the ground, glimmering with a spectral light. It beckoned, and I crawled toward it, heart racing, but as I reached to grasp the shard, a hand, clammy and covered in decay, clutched mine, squeezing tightly as I felt the cold seep into my bones, an icy whisper creeping closer. You should have never opened that door, the shadow rasped in my ear, its breath foul and rancid. In that agonizing moment, reality quaked, and with it, I felt the world around me shift. I turned my head, catching a glimpse of a figure rising from the dark, its form stitching together with shadows a new entity, raw and merciless, ready to devour whatever remained of my soul, and as the ground continued to tremble beneath me, I realized with horror that this was only the beginning. The forest had awakened, and in its depths, something ancient and hungry was returning for me, but even amidst the chaos, I could sense an undeniable truth: the mirror was more than just a reflection of my soul. It was the key. As the hand of darkness tightened around my wrist, I whispered a trembling promise to myself: I will be free. But with the last bit of light barely graspable, the reflection flickered, expansive and menacing, pulling me toward the abyss with an enticing grin. As reality splintered once more, then everything went black. The darkness felt tangible, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud, and I couldn't breathe as I floated in that Stygian void. Sounds were muffled, but there was a hum of something, a sinister energy crackling just beneath the surface, intertwining reality and the unspeakable. Then, as if the universe sighed, a thin sliver of light broke through the infinite black. It tore apart the shadows like a blade, revealing the forest once more, drenched in moonlight. The trees loomed higher than ever, grotesquely warped, with their branches contorting to resemble clawed hands. I lay on the ground, the cool soil beneath me both grounding and uncomfortable, a reminder of how powerless I truly was. I startled upright, my heart pounding as fleeting visions of the mirror swirled in my mind. It was a flicker of hope in an ocean of despair, but hope, I remembered, was often a mirage within these malevolent woods, where reality twisted into nightmares. I could still feel the cold hand around my wrist, a phantom reminder of the darkness that had sought to pull me under. As I took shaky breaths, I realized the air felt charged, ripe with an oppressive energy, pregnant with the anticipation of whatever horrors lay ahead. As I gathered my bearings, I staggered forward, the trees parting slightly, guiding me down an uneven path that felt as if it wanted to lead me deeper into the heart of despair. Each step I took echoed through the assembled silence, and I glanced back, half afraid something might be lurking waiting just behind my shoulder. The moon overhead cast elongated shadows, and for an instant, I caught sight of something among the trees, darting away, too fast to discern. Reflexively, I called out, "Hello?" The sound hung heavy in the air, swallowed by the whispering winds that followed my words. The laughter began again, but this time it was not just from my reflection, it echoed from the depths of the forest, a cacophony of voices merging into a sadistic symphony that sent chills climbing up my spine. Each tone was familiar yet foreign, chilling every memory I had while relentlessly mocking me. I pressed forward despite the dread that clawed at my heart. The forest floor was littered with remnants of other live scraps of clothing, shattered toys, and childhood drawings faded by time and cruelty. I dared not to pause for fear of what that could mean. Instead, I rubbed the glass shard I still clutched, its edges biting into my palm as I reminded myself of my purpose. Suddenly, a sudden rustle erupted behind me, branches snapping underfoot. I spun around to face the source, wild terror sparking through me. Nothing. Just shadows stretching into the distance, swallowing the glimmers of moonlight hungrily. But then, a movement caught my eye above, and I looked up to see a shape perched on a branch overhead, an emaciated creature cloaked in the thinnest veil of bark and sinew. Its gaze held a wisdom that rivaled the ages, yet its smile was hollow, as if reality itself mourned its existence. I took a step back, heart racing, but the being cooed, "Do you fear the echoes of the past, little one? The shadows hold more than you could fathom." Its voice was a melody, both beautiful and terrifying. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, every instinct telling me to escape. "I am a keeper of secrets lost to the forest," it replied, its eyes glimmering with the light of countless lost souls, "and you are tethered to that which you cannot understand." "What do you mean?" I stammered, desperation clawing at my throat. "What do I need to understand?" With a graceful flutter, it leapt from its perch, landing silently before me. "Your mirror, dear child, does not only reflect the truth. It holds the remnants of memories, much like these fragments around you, echoes of those who once were. You must choose, embrace the light or surrender to the shadows." And then it vanished, leaving behind only the rustling of leaves and the haunting echoes of those once lost to this wretched place. Panic gripped my insides. Lights or shadows? What would it mean to embrace either? As I Glanced around, it was as though 1,000 eyes turned to me, judging, yearning, insatiably hungry. My breath quickened as once again I heard the thundering howl of something monstrous reverberate through the woods, shaking the forest to its core. Something was coming for me, more terrifying than the reflection in the mirror or the creature that had just spoken. An overwhelming sense of urgency took hold. I had to find the mirror, the key to understanding whatever darkness awaited. I pressed deeper into the woods, the path ahead shrouded in mist that twisted and coiled. Shadows crept closer as I moved forward, impatient and voracious, each heartbeat sinking with the relentless pursuit of whatever hunted me. The underbrush erupted around me, a menagerie of groans and whispers that rose like a discordant hymn. Suddenly, I tripped, falling face first into a tangle of roots interwoven like fingers yearning up. My fingers grazed a smooth surface, and as I fumbled, I realized it was the mirror, pulsating with a strange glow, and in that moment, the world stilled. "Find me," a voice murmured, silky and malevolent, slipping through the fabric of reality itself, compelling my gaze away from the mirror. "You crave understanding, but can you bear the truth?" I recoiled, adrenaline surging, but just as I turned to escape, the ground trembled, a fissure opening beneath me with a shriek that poured from the depths of the earth, a hunger so raw it nearly stole my breath. The mirror trembled in my grasp, its surface cracking, a reflection of not just my face but countless others merging into only 1,000 souls confronting me with their grief and despair. In that terribly fleeting moment, I understood. I could either confront the truth and reconcile with the frightened little girl inside me, or plunge deeper into madness that awaited in the shadows, and as the howl crescendoed into a haunting howl, I knew my time was running out. The choice loomed above me, a chasm ready to swallow my existence whole. Then, just as I made my decision, shadows flashed around me, swirling, no longer just faceless whispers but figures coalescing, and with one final gust, the mirror shattered in my hand, and I was engulfed by screams. As darkness swallowed me again, amidst the cacophony I felt the presence of something ancient and grotesque. "Embrace your fate," it hissed, as reality dulled around me. And then silence. I awoke to an alien stillness, a void where chaos once reigned. The dissipation of sound was unsettling, the forest had transformed. Instead of the haunting cries and whispers that had followed me, there was a solemn hush, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Disoriented, I pushed myself up from the ground, the cold earth crumbling beneath my fingers. The shards of my mirror lay scattered around me, the fragments glinting dully in the moonlight. I gathered them hesitantly, the pieces feeling heavier than before, as if they contained the weight of lost souls. Each shard caught glimpses of the world behind me, a silhouette moving swiftly through the trees. I turned, heart drumming, but found nothing. The air was thick, suffocating, almost electric, charged with an inertia, foreboding sense of being continually watched. I held the shards close to my chest, feeling strangely connected to their bitter remnants. Hadn't they once shown me the truth? But now, they felt like a curse, a painful reminder of choices made in desperation. As I stood, a chilling breeze swept through the trees, carrying with it a whisper soft but laced with malice. "You chose wisely, for now." It was not the voice of the creature, but something more ancient, echoing through the very roots of the forest. A shiver raced down my spine, and I turned to escape, but dread rooted my feet to the ground. It was then I saw her. Just beyond the nearest cluster of trees stood a girl, no older than 10, her hair long and wild, capturing the light as if wreathed in luminescent mist. She wore a white dress, dirt smudged at the hem, and her eyes, wide and hollow, reflected fears I couldn't bear to know. She lifted a tiny finger, pointing behind me, her small mouth forming the words, "Don't look," but I couldn't help it. An overwhelming curiosity commanded my gaze. What met my eyes sent a shudder through my soul. The shadows were no longer merely dark, they were alive, swirling together, entwining as if forming a tapestry of sorrow. Faces emerged from the gloom, twisting and contorting, each bearing a silent scream. A symphony of grief that resonated in my very core. Then more figures joined the shadows, scraping closer, their forms shifting, elongating as if they were being pulled by invisible strings. They reached for me, hands outstretched, pleading and clawing, trying desperately to break free from their non-existence. Join us, they murmured in a cacophony of voices. Find peace. Panic surged through my veins as I stumbled backward, but the girl remained, her unblinking gaze tracking the growing darkness. You mustn't listen to them, she screamed, her voice a piercing echo in the silence. They cannot be trusted. They want you to suffer for eternity. Desperation raged through me, flaring as anxiety tightened its grip. I ran, but the forest contorted, shifting with jarring abruptness, branches twisting as if in orchestrated motion. The path I once followed morphed into an endless maze of shadows. Hisses and growls echoed around me, the cacophony of lost souls hungry to claim me. The girl's voice trailed behind me, a haunting melody of despair. The truth will set you free. Don't let them take you, I gasped as a shadow lunged at me, the air around thickening like molasses. I felt the icy tendrils wrapping around my ankles, pulling me down. The earth quaked beneath my feet, desperate to swallow me back into its depths. Please! I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat as I dug my fingers into the earth, trying to hold myself steady. The darkness pressed in on all sides, suffocating, swallowing the light. I inhaled sharply and led my thoughts back to the girl. What do I do? I cried out to the void, expecting no response. You must face them. The girl appeared directly before me, now a mere apparition flickering between worlds, suspended between life and the terrible unknown. Behind you search for the truth. Reveal what lay hidden beneath the light. As fear coursed through me, my instincts fought with the desire to flee. I turned and in that instant, the shadows erupted with frenzied energy, shrieking with a ferocity that made my ears ring. The clarity of her words flooded my mind, unlocking a hidden memory. What had the creature told me? Embrace the light or surrender to the shadows. Gripping the shards tightly, I spun back toward the haunting whispers. The amalgamation of anguished faces surrounded me, a visceral twisted beauty, bubbling with rage and sorrow. They beckoned, with desperation seeping from their every word, join us. Understand, trembling, I dropped the shards. Instead of cascading like shards of glass, they morphed into shimmering orbs, swirling light engulfing me. The darkness recoiled, hissing, but the girl's voice urged me forward. I stepped into the glow, my body alive with warmth, unraveling the shadows that clung to me. But then, from within the amalgamation of shadows, a deeper growl rose, thrumming through the atmosphere as it rippled toward me. Eyes, dozens of them, shone like coals in the dark, an ominous predatory hunger consuming everything in its path. You cannot escape, a voice sliced through the air, deep and commanding that I stumbled at the weight of its presence, understanding dawning. If I found the truth, I would not only unravel the mystery of my own existence, I might also unleash something far more terrifying than I had imagined. As the shadows closed in, a maw of despair opened wide, darkness uncoiling to claim my truth. Behind you! The girl shouted, but it was too late. In that final fleeting moment, I saw what lurked beneath the veil, a beast more horrific than any memory. My heart thundered as I realized I had become part of the darkness. I was standing between life and absolute horror. The truth beckoned for me to step forward, but it also carried an insatiable hunger, and then, just as I was about to face the eyes of that looming terror, I plunged headfirst into a void where no sound emerged, where only the specter of my own past awaited. I was weightless, drifting between realms, barely tethered to the remnants of my physical body. A suffocating silence enveloped me, amplifying the rhythmic pulse of my racing heart. It felt as if I had been thrust into an abyss, the boundaries of time and space warping into a formless landscape. Memories intertwined with shadows, pulling me deeper into the void. Fleeting images flashed before my eyes, faces of loved ones, fragmented moments of laughter, and the echoes of sweet voices fading into sorrowful whispers. I reached out for them, desperate to hold on to that flickering light. But as each fragmented memory glimmered brightly, the darkness clamped down harder, siphoning away my resolve. Accept it, a voice echoed from the depths, slithering around me like smoke. What you've lost is not gone. It can return, but at a price. In the swirling blackness, the haunting memories morphed, warping into grotesque parodies of what I wanted to remember. My sense of self began to disintegrate into a cacophony of screams, a chorus of anguish that drowned out every thought, every heartbeat. I was ensnared in a labyrinth of dread, confined by the very shadows I had sought to confront. Then, like a cold, sharp knife cutting through velvet night, I felt a presentia touch at my shoulder, chilling yet electric. I turned slowly, dreading what I would see. A figure loomed behind me, draped in a shroud of despair, eyes burning with an otherworldly fire that illuminated the darkness. I could see flesh, but it was pallid, stretched tight over bone, as if it had been molded by suffering itself. Douc? It whispered, voice dripping with sweet malice. The light you seek is nothing but an illusion. In this realm, shadows are truth, and truth is suffering. With a shaky resolve, I broke free from its fixation and spun around, seeking the girl, the only glimmer of hope who had warned me. But the void extended infinitely, each step forward featureless, as if I were walking on the surface of a great, yawning abyss. I could feel the weight of time pressing down, a sinister engagement with nothingness. Remember. The girl's voice echoed through the chaos, now more distanced, less like a plea and more an invocation. Remember who you are. You must reclaim yourself. The air crackled. Shadows writhed at the edges of my vision, whispering secrets laced with incalculable pain. Frantic, I closed my eyes, forcing memories into focus. Me childhood home, the scent of sun-warmed grass, laughter shared under a crimson sky. I envisioned the girl's face, the very image connecting me to yet another heartbeat, desperate and alive, and just like that, a door ignited within my mind. I felt it crackling open, revealing long-buried truths. Memory rushed forth, a torrent of emotions, suffering, joys, reluctant decisions that had led me to this vortex of despair. Each memory strengthened my resolve, reshaping me from the depths of despair. Suddenly, the cold grip of the figure tightened, clicking its bony fingers over my wrist. You think you can resist? It tugged me closer, wicked anticipation shimmering in its eyes. You belong to the shadows now. I screamed in defiance, the sound drawing power from the recollection surrounding me. In a surge of fury, I lifted my hands, pushing outwards not with physical strength, but with the force of forged history. Light pulsated from my core, detonating like 1,000 suns. The shadows flinched, gasping at the radiant attack. Foolish ephemeral light. It shrieked, retreating as the shadows swirled in chaos, cascading back into the void. You'll never escape the depths of this darkness. With every pulse of light, the figure faltered, its hold loosening. I braced myself, pushing against the relentless tide flowing inwards, narrowing my focus to the memories of love, laughter, and sacrifice. But then, in a flash of brilliance, another memory erupted, a memory filled with dread. A voice, deep and thunderous, whispered from the abyss. You've tasted your heart's desire. But knowledge has a cost. You must dive deeper beyond the veil, beyond choice. I felt myself slipping, the light flickering, shadows weaving once more. Heart pounding, I understood the truth was too potent to grasp, for it signaled a choice laden with horror. I would have to descend further still to uncover the darkest layers of my existence. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet crumbled, disintegrating like sand under an unrelenting tide. I felt myself plummeting into the chasm, swallowed by pure darkness, the laughter of forgotten memories echoing behind me like a cruel farewell. As I fell, a chilling realization set in: knowledge would not free me from the shadows, it would bind me to them forever if I dared to look. Breaking the surface of my consciousness, a new voice came, a murmur rising from the void, soft and alluring, beckoning me deeper still. Welcome back. We've been waiting for you. The truth binds us now. And just before I lost myself to the depths again, the shadowy figure re-emerged, its gaze locking onto mine, a wicked smile spreading across its translucent lips. Let us discover what you are truly meant to become. Then darkness enveloped me entirely, a shroud of fear and solidarity, leaving the question hanging in chilling ambiguity: what horrors awaited me in the truth yet to be revealed? I descended into the depths of blackness, a feeling of weightlessness amplifying the dread that wrapped around my heart like a vice. Time lost all meaning, and the silence grew oppressive, filled only with the distant echoes of my screams and the sinister whispers of the abyss. I had fallen beyond the thin layers that separated who I had been from the entity that now cradled my essence in its chilling grasp. Visions flickered erratically in the void, like scenes from an old, flickering film reel, each one a fragment of my life intertwined with someone else's shadow. Faces appeared, distorted, family members twisted into grotesque effigies of my memory as me mother weeping quietly with hollow eyes, my father's smile warped into a sinister grin. The girl I sought appeared fleetingly among them, her once gentle smile now tinged with anguish. "Help me find the other side," I yelled, but my voice was swallowed, devoured by the yawning silence. Just as quickly as her ghostly visage appeared, another entity emerged, a wraith-like figure, its translucent form swirling like mist. It drifted closer, an aura of despair suffocating the air, an undeniable draw toward the shadows. "This is where you belong," it hissed, breath cold and bitter as it circled me like a predator. "Embrace your true self. The one that knows no kindness." Fighting against the oppressive tide, I summoned what remained of my will. "I will not become one of you," I shouted, my voice cracking against the shadows. "I refuse." "Refusal is but a flickering flame," the wraith taunted, a cruel smile spreading across its ethereal face. "Even the brightest light eventually sputters out." I recoiled from its chilling presence, feeling trapped between the agony of despair and the lingering glimmers of hope swaddled in my memories. Yet I could sense something shifting deep within the darkness, a slithering sensation, as if the shadows were alive, crawling along my skin, whispering deceitful promises. Suddenly, the ground tremored beneath me, echoing the mood of despair punctuating the air. I struggled to maintain my focus, adrenaline surging through my veins, when a ghastly figure erupted from the depths, its eyes glowed as fiery pits of malice, stalking closer with every trembling breath I took. It wore a face I recognized far too well, my own, distorted and infused with twisted joy. "You think you can escape your destiny?" the doppelganger sneered. "You are merely one thread in this web of shadow. It longs for unity. Come, join us." I stumbled back, dread pooling in my stomach. "No. I won't be consumed," but the shadows only laughed, a cacophony of despair filling the expanse around me. The darkness thickened, pressing around me like a living entity, tendrils snaking through the air, forming tendrils of agony that tugged at my soul. Desperation clawed at my heart. I closed my eyes, praying to find the remnants of the little girl's voice, guiding me towards something beyond this nightmare. "Remember, you hold the power," she echoed in my mind. "You define your truth." I took a deep breath, calling forth every ounce of light I had fought to preserve. Summoning courage, I delved into the reservoir of memories, igniting emotions with relentless determination. Vivid recollections sprang to lift a tapestry of bittersweet memories, breathing warmth back into the chilling void, and just as my light began to converge into a radiant force, the darkness spiraled frenetically, battling against my light. The shadowy monsters writhed, racked with their own tormented souls, a spectral dance of anguish clutching at me with unyielding fingers. No. I cried as they leaped forward, the guttural screams of the shadows echoing in my head, a cacophony breaking through my resolve. "I am stronger than you," but in that moment of defiance, an unimaginable horror unfurled as serpentine shadows latched onto my heart, squeezing tighter with cruel precision. My lungs seized as the light faltered, sending me crashing back into the abyss. From the depths, a thunderous voice howled, "You are nothing but a fleeting dream. We will take what remains of you." As the shadows tightened their hold, a twisted sense of belonging infiltrated my sanity. "What are you?" I gasped, feeling the darkness wrapping around my essence, compressing my thoughts until I could barely breathe. "I am the collective fear of all who have come before you," it hissed. "Your ancestors, your dreams, your nightmares, they converge here to remind you that escape is a mirage in this desolate land." Just as despair threatened to consume me whole, I caught sight of an ember of light, a distant flicker desperately calling my name. It shined with the fervor of undying hope. It was my salvation. I lunged toward it, threads of darkness clawing at me, the air filled with shrieks of rage. "Your defiance will not be tolerated." The shadows screamed, but I pressed on. I stretched, reaching for the glimmer, which pulsated and danced, taking on the face of the girl the guiding spirit, "Find me," she urged, and with one last determination, I plunged headlong into the shimmering light, my heart racing, the horror of the shadows clawing desperately at my fading form, but as I felt warmth enveloping me, a deep shudder rolled through the void, and everything warped around me, the shadows erupting in furious cries. "Do you think you can simply leave? You will face the embrace of despair, once and for all." Suddenly, a scream pierced through the darkness as the remnants of my memory's shattered echoes of laughter twisted to cries of agony, reverberating through my mind. I grasped desperately at the warm glow, but then a chilling whisper encapsulated me once more. "You've wandered into our domain, and now you belong to us." In that moment of paralyzing fear, I was plunged into a vision trapped in a fractal of horror, where I witnessed the grotesque transformation of those who had succumbed. Would I join them, or could I sever the ties of despair? The world around me began to fracture, tearing apart, fragmenting like shards of glass filled with endless torment as I gasped, "No. No. I won't give in." But then, just as hope flickered on the horizon, I fell, tumbling into the gaping maw of darkness from which there may be no return, the chilling laughter echoing in my ears like the last vestiges of my courage breaking apart. And from nowhere, a voice, smooth and cruel, whispered in my ear as I fell, "This is just the beginning." The curtain of darkness enveloped me, and cold dread dripped from the shadows like sap from a gnarled tree. I collided with the ground, not the soft soil or the familiar earth but a slick, cold surface that pulsed beneath me. A slick umbra that flayed at my insides, dragging me further down into an abyss where echoes of my own cries conspired to hold me captive. I gasped for breath, the air thick and suffocating, rancid with the scent of decay. Panic surged in my veins as I kicked frantically against the gluey grip of the darkness, each movement eliciting sharp pangs from the shadows biting at my ankles. The pulling pressure made my thoughts fracture, splintering into memories that slithered like serpents, wrapping around me, squeezing tightly. Help! A whisper clawed its way through the cacophony of despair. Was it hers? Or did it belong to the multitude of souls imprisoned in this nightmare with me? "Miserable wretches!" hissed a monstrous voice somewhere beyond the veil of shadow. "You believe you can escape this? You are tethered to your fate, the cycle demands it." Around me, shadows writhed, growing increasingly animated, forming roiling shapes that could very well be faces, familial ghosts with twisted expressions of panic, hollowed eyes beseeching me for release. They advanced slowly, languidly, like predators savoring their meal as I tried to flounder away. Suddenly, an unearthly howl reverberated through this dimension of night, the sound striking like a physical blow. I looked toward the source, heart pounding wildly in my chest. There, emerging from the cramped confines of the shadows, was a robed figure, a specter cloaked in tattered garments that seemed marred with sorrow. It extended a skeletal hand toward me, fingers elongated and quivering like the roots of a decaying tree. "Join the circle," it called, voice a rasping whisper that dripped with malice. "We are waiting. You are one of us now." The walls of the abyss throbbed with a journeying pulse, vibrating like the heartbeat of a creature long dead, yet alive in its hunger. "No!" I screamed, clawing back against the darkness that wrapped around my limbs, infected my thoughts, coiling tighter with every gasp of breath. "Embrace your fate," the specter crooned. "You have been brought here for a Ryasona sacrifice for those who wander. A soul for a soul." Panic swelled, striking like electricity to my flesh as I realized my memories were the chains binding me to this realm. The girl, the face in the flickering light, where was she? I swore I could feel her spirit tethered to my own, a warmth dancing just beyond the shadows, gnashing at my soul. But then, like a misaligned compass, the shadows shifted. From behind me, a violent rush surged forth, a wall of darkness that twisted and swayed, forming a vast, grotesque mouth with teeth like glimmering ice. An unending void that hungered, gaped, waiting to swallow my very essence, to feed. The shadows bellowed, and in their frenzied hunger, they lunged at me, despair manifesting into a cacophonous scream. Panic escalated, spilling over into primal fear as I stumbled backward, nearly collapsing. I could hear their anguished wails crescendo, drowning me in the very essence of despair. They unleashed a symphony of torment that threatened to erode my sanity. With a frantic pulse of determination, I surged forward, ducking the advancing shadows, driven not just by the instinct to survive but by the fading flicker I sensed lingering beyond them. I plunged into the central vortex of the darkness, tearing through the veil that sought to claim me. Then, in a moment, the shadows parted. The light revealed itself, an incandescent glow that pulsed like a heartbeat, the visage of the girl illuminating the void. She reached out, the desperation in her eyes igniting a flaring sense of hope inside me. "You must fight, don't give in. Break the bond." But as I reached for her, the darkness writhed violently, echoing with fury. The doppelganger emerged from the shadows once more, its features a grotesque mask molded from my own visage, an expression of twisted euphoria plastered on its face. "Foolish child," it roared, a stark counterpoint to my desperate plea. "You think the light can save you? It only serves to make your suffering sweeter. You belong to the collective now. You are threaded into our tapestry of despair. No. I gasped, horrified as the doppelganger lunged toward me, claws outstretched. Time slowed as darkness rushed toward me like a tidal wave, swallowing everything. Then the spectral girl shouted, "Fight it. You define your fate." The ground beneath me trembled with a power I could still feel, an underlying connection resonating through my chorea, warmth braided through the chill. "Let go of the shadows," I screamed. "You are not me." The very fabric of the void seemed to tremble in response to my words, and the shadows contorted, writhing as though they were being drawn away from me. But I could feel the pressure growing, the darkness retaliating like a pained beast, and suddenly, with a jarring flash, a desolate voice rumbled through the abyss, echoing all too familiar. "You may fight, but you will never win. You are already bound." At that moment, something shifted, the very ground beneath me began fragmenting and disintegrating, tendrils of darkness pulled taut as my surroundings dissolved like ash in the wind. The visions filled my mind with horror. Faces of the lost emerged, their eyes widened in ecstasy and pain, as if urging for me to join their ranks. As I fell through the void, the lymphatic shadows surged, sending an electrifying jolt through my spine, whispering promises of belonging, laughter spilling through shrieks, a cacophony that threatened to drown every thought. "No!" I yelled as I plummeted further into the black hole, the laughter rising to a maddening crescendo, and then I saw her, writhing in the shadows, her eyes wide in terror. As I reached out to pull her from the abyss, the very essence of darkness surrounded me, grabbing hold of me. Together, it hissed, and just as I reached forth, the last of my fortitude waned, then everything shattered around me, darkness devouring the light as I screamed into the void. I awoke gasping, each inhalation fraught with suffocating dread. I was no longer cloaked in darkness but sprawled on damp earth beneath the eerie glow of a flickering overhead lamp. The familiar weight of the shadows hung heavy around me, yet they now pulsed with an almost sentient rhythm as if they anticipated my next move. Disoriented, I struggled to rise. The darkness whispered in cascading tones, a disjointed melody of secrets long forgotten that swirled around me like smoke. I blinked against the fluorescent glare, my surroundings slowly configuring into a nightmare I had desperately wished to escape. I could see the edges of an abandoned campsite, the remnants of fleecy tents torn and flapping like lost souls hung out to dry, remnants of those who had stumbled into the same abyss I had. My heart plummeted. The campers who had once surrounded the fire were nowhere to be seen, only the crackling wood remained, their voices silenced, leaving a haunting echo in the air. My hands trembled as I brushed them across my face, realizing with horror I was stained with soot-like remnants of darkness. The bearable weight of solitude closed in on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I could feel eyes watching. I knew that presence belonged to something darker, more hungry than any shadow that lurked in the night. I quickly scanned the area, searching for any sign of the spectral girl or the tormenting doppelganger, but no one emerged to guide me. The absence of sound only rendered the atmosphere thicker, even as the trees whispered cryptic secrets. As I stood up, the lamp flickered, casting grotesque shapes across the ground. For a moment, I swore I saw the twisted visage of the doppelganger, its mouth curling into a monstrous smile. Not yet, it seemed to say, before vanishing back into the swirling void that draped the campsite. With each step away from the flickering light, an overwhelming sense of dread clutched my chest. I moved to the edge of the clearing, my breath quickening as I approached the tree line, where darkness pooled thicker than ink. Just inside, I could hear soft voices echoing like wind through leaves, but as I pressed closer, they morphed into gut-wrenching sobs. "Help me," came a distinct voice, a tremor of anguish slicing through the obscured night. It was a child's voice, the haunting plea unraveling my resolve. Without thinking, I rushed toward the sound, driven by instinct and a desperate need to find salvation. "Where are you?" I called out, heart racing. "I'm here," the sobbing intensified, an ephemeral sound that wound its way deeper into the woods. I rushed past twisting branches, crumbling under the weight of ominous darkness that seemed to reach for me, clawing at my limbs. Shadows danced along the forest floor, playful yet malignant, guiding me forward and ensnaring my fears. Suddenly, the whispers shifted. It was as if the forest itself began murmuring, the treetops shaking, the roots writhed with aches of the forgotten. "Join us," they beckoned in low tones, burrowing under my skin, gnawing at my sanity. I kept moving, despite the dread crawling up my spine. The sobbing stopped dead in its tracks, replaced by silence so profound it encompassed me like a shroud. My pulse thudded in my temples as I stumbled into a small clearing dimly illuminated by moonlight. There, in the center, knelt the outline of a figure, a small silhouette in a tattered dress, hunched over as if cradling a hidden treasure. I approached slowly, my caution dissipated by the echoes of hope. "Hey," I breathed, inching closer. "I'm here to help you." The figure turned its face, illuminated in the pale moonlight. My stomach twisted as recognition washed over me. It was the girl from the tent. Yet her eyes were hollow, reflecting no light, no life. They bore the weight of centuries of despair, yet a glimmer of something, maybe hope, shimmered within the abyss. "Why did you come?" she rasped, voice like dry leaves. "Don't you see? You shouldn't be here." "Please," I implored, "I can help you. We can escape." But as I reached out, the shadows around her exploded into a frenzy, a vortex of screams spiraling outwards. Tendrils of darkness stretched toward me, binding my limbs, pulling me back into their clutches. The girl's expression morphed into panic as she recoiled. "You can't help me. No one can escape." Just then, the doppelganger re-emerged beside her, eyes flaring with wicked delight as it grinned cruelly down at the girl. "You should have never come back," it snarled, the voice a distorted echo of my own. I stepped back instinctively, barely feeling the grasp of shadows ensnaring me. The forest seemed to vibrate with malicious glee, and the shadows began to gather again, coalescing into monstrous shapes, the faces of the lost swirling within the abyss. "Join us," they whispered, a haunting melody that stirred something deep within my core, resonating like a forgotten lullaby. With a sudden rush of fury, I broke free from my bindings, lunging toward the girl. "We can fight them together," I shouted, but as I reached for her hand, the doppelganger's claws swiped sharply through the air, narrowly missing me. "No!" the girl screamed, her voice a piercing echo that shattered the night. "You'll be trapped forever." Before I could reply, the shadows grasped around us, pouring thick and suffocating like tar. My heart raced as I felt the weight of despair intensifying, the laughter of the shadows spiraling into a terrifying crescendo. "Together," they shrieked, as the darkness surged over me. And just then, in that blistering moment of cold panic, I locked eyes with the girl again, her gaze a catalyst igniting an ancient fear buried deep within, and as the shadows began to pull us apart, I could feel the very essence of burying terror igniting one last obscure thought. What if I didn't fight? What if there was peace in surrender? Then a blinding flash roared through my mind, followed by a deafening silence as everything fell into place around me, and I realized that the choice before me would seal my fate forever. Everything unraveled in that momentous sliver of clarity, slicing through the all-encompassing dread. I was not just fighting for my life, I was battling for my very soul. But was my soul already forsaken, intertwined with misery and shadows that craved my surrender? The girl's pain twisted my heart as I grasped the weight of my existence. What price must I pay to escape this nightmare? I shouted, desperate for an answer. Freedom is costly, murmured the doppelganger, a sadistic smile spreading across its distorted face. What are you willing to sacrifice? The shadows pressed in closer, pulsating with malignant hunger. I could feel their grip tightening, a cacophony of haunted voices promising me depths of power that if I joined them, I would never feel pain again. Join us, they crooned, the air thick with their wicked longing. We are legion. The girl, however, seemed to fight back against the grasping darkness, her eyes wide with terror. Don't listen to them, she pleaded. They'll twist your heart until there's nothing left. Remember what? I snapped, frustration boiling over. What could possibly save me from this hell? A part of me craved to know, yearned for the answers hidden just past the shadows, even as I knew falling into that abyss meant losing myself forever. Your light, your love, it can guide you, she whispered, stepping closer to brave the tendrils snaking around her. You don't belong to the darkness, you belong to the light. You have to fight for what you truly want. In that moment, realization surged through me, igniting the embers of hope. No more fear, it was time to reclaim what I had lost. I searched for that fragile warmth within meth essence of the girl I once had been, the laughter, the freedom, even though the shadows clawed hungrily at my soul. Your light won't save you, the doppelganger hissed, lunging forward. Surrender and let the shadows cradle you, but dread curdled into defiance. I screamed back into the darkness, I am not yours. And felt a surge of energy race through my being. An ancient, primal force, fueled by every moment of love and joy, ignited fiercely behind my heart. I might be tethered to the shadows, but that didn't mean I had to serve them. The tendrils recoiled, howling as I unleashed my light against their encroaching darkness. I could see the faces of the lost twisting in agony, their wailing like a spectral chorus rising with my defiance. I projected the warmth, memories flooding forth, the carefree mornings in sun-drenched fields, echoes of laughter shared with those I loved, and moments of blossoming hope that refused to dim. Take that! I screamed, rending the air between us with raw force, lighting a pathway through the shadows. The darkness hissed and recoiled, crushed by the unapologetic flood of light that spilled from my core. But just as my resolve seemed powerful enough to conquer the encroaching evil, I felt the balance tilt. No. The doppelganger screeched, lunging toward me, claws poised for impact. I felt the energy straining as our essences collided. The memories wasteland around me were starting to fade, consumed by the dark. The girl reached for me, eyes wide, trembling with fear. A searing pain erupted at my chest as phantom fingers clutched. You cannot escape. The darkness clawed and twisted. It was trying to drag me down, to absorb the very light I fought so fiercely to hold on to. In that visceral moment of anguish, I felt a fracture, and with it came a paradoxical realization. The truth laid bare: it was never about escaping, it was about understanding the shadows, facing them head-on. I am the darkness. I am the light. I bellowed, forcing the words past the suffocating pressure that coerced me into submission. Both. Together. I will not choose. Determination split through the gloom, reverberating through the shadows that encircled me like a wraith. And then something profound happened. The doppelganger exploded into darkness, fragments of my being scattered like ashes in the wind. Choose. It cried, but the shadows began to dissipate as my light expanded, fracturing the bonds that tied me to despair. I felt the girl encapsulating my vision, her small face illuminated in courage radiating through the remnants of chaos swirling all around us. When the echoes of shadows receded, the forest breathed a sigh, revealing aspects of its corrupted beauty, a glimmer of hope cresting in the distance, a window toward something beyond despair. But then I felt a chill that crawled up my spine, uncertainty closing in. The choice I had made, to embrace both darkness and light, didn't mean I was free. In the recesses of my mind, a whisper lingered, coiling tight, a reminder from the shadows that evil had not been extinguished. It would always shimmer in the corners. As the forest sighed, and I took a step toward freedom, I glanced back at the veil that between good and evil at the images flashing throughout the darkness I'd just left behind. The laughter of lost souls resumed its wicked symphony, echoing through the once familiar trees. And I knew, with bone-deep certainty, this nightmare was only cloaked in calm. The girl, still beside me, began to fade, her features disappearing with every breath I took. What happens now? I called out, desperation tinging my voice as she shimmered like stardust losing its luster. You carry us, she answered, a ghostly echo hovering in my mind. Forever bound. We wait for you to remember that we grow in the dark. And just like that, I was hit with the chilling truth. They were waiting for me, not just in the shadows behind me but in the very fiber of my being. With every step forward, I could still feel their haunting presence, the weight of the darkness I had embraced with each memory, intertwining within my existence. Turning from the clearing behind, I stepped into a new kind of darkness, a tighter embrace, riddled with horrors that would never be forgotten, haunted by the unending echo of their calls. My heart raced as I whispered into the void. You will never take me, but deep inside, the haunting dread sunk in, and a chilling echo lingered as I stepped into the darkness, a part of me forever tethered to the shadows I had felt compelled to embrace. And as I walked ahead, I heard the sinister chorus whispering behind me, we are never truly gone.